Hello and welcome back to Gary's Garage. This week I'm going to get the rear diff back into the car. Last time round I started to make some changes to the rear diff carrier and chopped this bit out. Next on the agenda is to finish drilling through here and through this upright here and get it ready to be bolted together. So let's do that now. With both pieces drilled out now to take the 12mm bolts, I could just bolt them back together. However, it's quite likely that these two bits of box section, as they're tightened together, will start to crush, which means that the bolt will work its way loose and I'll have a little bit of movement on the rear suspension, which isn't what we want. So what I'm going to do is drill out a larger hole on two sides of the box section, probably the bits where they both join, and then insert some round tube into the hole and weld round the edge to make crush washers or crush tubes. So what that will do is this will then take up the space in between the two edges of the box section, and as everything's tightened together it will stop the two pieces of box section being squished together and make a nice strong joint. So let's drill these out, cut this down and weld them into place. Now those crush tubes are in place, we can do a test fit. Okay, I think that once that is all tightened up, that will be pretty rigid. But just to add an extra little bit of strength, I am going to put something on the back edge here. I probably won't bolt through it, but it will be there just to provide that extra little bit of rigidity and friction. So let's nip this lot up together, make it square, and cut and weld on the next piece. I'm really happy with how that's all sitting. So next thing I'm going to do is give it a bit of a clean up and paint to match the rest. And then once that's dry, we'll look at fitting the new diff to it. So that's all the parts of the rear diff carrier painted up, and they look a little bit nicer than they did when I took them off. So next thing I'm going to do is put the main bulk of the diff carrier back up under the car, hook up the suspension on the side that is fixed, and then look at getting the diff back up in place. With the diff carrier and the driver's side rear suspension back in place, I was hoping that the next thing I could do would be lift in my new diff. However, I didn't research again, so I can't actually fit the new diff. Let me show you why. So here are two Nissen 200SX rear differentials. On the face of it, they both look fairly similar. However, there's a couple of key differences between the two, which means it's not going to be quite as easy to bolt it straight up into this car. So I've joined the two together on the diff output flange, and the first thing that you can notice is that one of them is slightly longer than the other. So the new one, which is in the distance, is from a S14, the later model, and the near one is from a 200S, is from an S13. So another big difference there is the front mountings. The S14 has bigger holes which have bushes in them. The S13 have smaller holes which are solid. And most of that length difference comes from the ABS sensor that's in the front of the S14. So that means that my prop shaft is going to be too long. Moving round to the back, and the S13, now on the left, has 4 bolt holes holding it onto the diff carrier, and the S14 has 2. That one's simple enough to resolve, whip the rear covers off and swap them over. But it's that front mounting and the length that's going to be difficult. So I've got two choices. Either I buy some or make up some bushes to go in those diff mounting holes at the front there and shorten the prop shaft, or I move the internals of the S14 into the S13 casing. That will give me a good opportunity to replace all the bearings and hopefully get a nice smooth diff, but there's extra expense to that. So for the moment, what I'm going to do is put the S13 one back in as it is. I know it works, and with the changes that I've done, it then means when I come to make a decision what I want to do later, it'll be very easy to whip this diff out and then either send it away to be rebuilt using the two to make one decent diff, or to swap the S14 one in as it is and get a new prop made up. So with that, let's get this S13 diff back in the car and finish putting the suspension back together. I think I should have put this one in before that one. Out we come again. Okay, so that's everything mostly in place. Next thing to do is jack up the suspension on each side to get these arms sitting level, and then I can tighten up these bolts, and then all of the rubber covers over the rose joints will be in the right place and they won't get stretched and stressed with the normal movements of the car. Right, next is the speed sensor and prop shaft. As you can see, the prop is already just the right length, so if I put that S14 diff on, the nose would be about here. So yeah, prop shaft just a little bit too long. There needs to be about a 1mm gap between the end of the speed sensor and what it's picking up on. So I just need to adjust these two nuts up and down the thread of the sensor to line it up properly. So I'm pretty happy with how that diff carrier has turned out. Although I haven't been able to get the new diff in, it does mean that when I finally get around to it, it will be a much easier job than it otherwise would have been. So time well spent, even if the outcome is that I'm back at pretty much the same place with the old diff. Now the next logical thing to do would be to put the drive shaft in. But when I was taking it apart, I noticed that the brakes on this side were a little stiff and binding up. So before I put the drive shafts in, I'm going to strip down both sets of brakes, give them a good checking over, and put them all back together nice and free, and then put the drive shafts in. So join me next time on Garry's Garage when it's time to break things.